The splice method has a number of parameters which can be a little confusing to understand when you're getting started with trying to implement splice. So I want to talk through these specifically. So first imagine that we've got two silly strings, A, whose characters field is XYZ, and silly string B, whose characters field contains the characters 8 and 9. So the way that we call splice is something like this. We say A dot, and then we give the method name, splice, and then we need to give some arguments that correspond to these parameters. So let's say we're starting at offset 0 with a length of 0, and our silly string that we are using as the other is going to be B. Okay? So let me just label these. Even though this wouldn't show up in your code, I want to label these arguments. So this argument is index. This argument is length. And length refers to how many characters we're deleting. Index refers to where our deletion in our insertion happens. And other is the other string that we are inserting into silly string A. Okay? And so now I'm going to draw the outcome of this. Right? So how does this work? So the way that splice works is what we're going to say is up to the index, take every character from array A up to the index. Well, our index here is 0. So in our output, we're going to have no character that comes before the splicing. And then we're going to say for the next n characters, or however long this length is, for the next length characters, we're going to delete those. Well, there's 0 characters we're deleting in this instance. We'll look at an example where we do delete some characters. Insert the other string at this point. So our other string is 8, 9. And once we're done with the insertion, what we're going to do is we're going to take from the index after the number of characters we've deleted, which was 0 in both cases. So starting at this point right here, we are going to copy all of the other characters at the end of this. So X, Y, Z will be the outcome. And notice that I'm not drawing the full object representation of this silly string, but this would be a silly string and its chars array would be made up of these characters. Right? So what we did was we said we are splicing in this particular string at index 0 and we are removing no characters from the original array. All right? So let's take a look at a different example. Let's modify our arguments here. So let's try at index 1. How do we think about this if we started at index 1, and we'll keep length at 0 for this point to just demonstrate what happens next. Right? So if we start at index 1, what we're saying is take all of the characters from the original array up to this index. So we have this original character of X at index 0. So we start with X, right? And then we stop at this point. We stop at this index point, and then we're going to delete the number of characters at the length array. So we're going to ignore them. We're going to ignore this length of characters. Well, this is still 0, so we're not going to ignore any characters, right? So when we come back, we'll come back to this point, and after we've added in our characters from silly string B, we will copy Y and Z. So now we need to actually insert the spliced characters. So we're going to splice in 8 and 9, okay? And so 8 and 9 will follow. This is our other string. We've reached the end of this particular string, so all that's left of us to do is copy the rest of our original, or this character array. So Y and Z will follow. And so notice that we have inserted the string 8, 9 into the string XYZ at this point. So let's take a look at what this length argument does. Right? So if we change the length, what will happen? Well, we're going to delete some characters in the middle. So let me try making this length 1. What this is going to mean is we are going to remove one character from inside of the original array. So again, we'll start thinking about from the beginning. What happens here? Well, we're going to take all of the characters of our original array, starting from 0 up until this index. So that is this single character X. And then what's going to happen is we're going to see that we're going to skip over one array, or one element. So we're going to skip over one element in this array. So we're going to skip y. We'll come back to that. We insert our spliced characters here, so 8, 9. And then we just have to copy what's left of the original string. And so here we've got some substring remaining, z. So notice that by saying we are splicing out one character, our resulting array is, or our resulting silly string is x89z. What you might consider is when we are pulling out this particular section of a string, you might use the substring method based on some indices that you've written before. The same goes when you are trying to pull out the back half of a string, or what comes after what was just spliced out or removed. And building up the resulting string, you should consider using the concatenate method, which you've already written. So in effect, what you're kind of doing at a high level is you are concatenating the first part of this array up until the index. You're skipping over some middle part based on the length of the characters you're omitting. You're going to concatenate with that the string b, and then you're going to concatenate with that the resulting, or the remaining portion of the original string. All right, so let's look at just one more example here, sort of in this form. So let's say instead of a length of 1, we used a length of 2. And if you want to pause the video to try this out on your own and imagine what the result should be, go for it. So the first thing we do is we look at the substring up to the index, right? So up to the index 1 means that we're only looking at this part of the string. So that is x. And then we are going to concatenate to that the other string. So we are splicing in the other string by concatenating it, 8, 9. And then we are going to look at, well, what is the remaining substring that we're working with? And so the remaining substring that we're working with, we're going to have to add 2 to our index. So that's these two characters. We're skipping over these. And notice we've reached the end. There is no substring because 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 is the length of our array, and there's no more characters to copy in. So the resulting spliced output would just be x8, 9. When you're working on this, I would highly encourage you to try making use of the substring and concatenate methods after you understand what pieces you're pulling from which string and the order in which you need to do that. And that actually simplifies this method quite a bit.